to migrate from the viewpoint of job seekers to job creators. And many of our alumni have been very successful in creating jobs, but this has not become a culture of the entire IIT ecosystem. Every such child who comes to IIT Kharagpur or any other IIT for higher education or any other premier institute for higher education has already an initial condition which is set up by the society, the peer pressure, the socio-economic broad perspectives, and therefore we cannot consider their mental health or well-being in an isolated manner. My summary or summarized realization is that the main challenge that we are seeing them to face is that while they all have reasonably high IQ, most of them are having shortage of EQ.
We have with us today Professor Suman Chakraborty. Professor Chakraborty took charge as the director at IIT Kharagpur, which is the country's first IIT in June this year. And since it is the country's first IIT, I wanted to check with you if you could tell us a little bit about whether you think the IITs have been able to keep pace with changes in technology, research, industry needs, and how do you think the IITs have adapted in terms of curriculum and research?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very important question. So, IITs, if you get back to the historical backdrop, that IIT Kharagpur was established with a particular purpose. At the time, just a couple of years or few years after India became independent, the whole idea was to develop a high quality technical education ecosystem and completely indigenous approach of giving the highest level of technical education. Now, from there to now, if we summarize, there are accomplishments, significant accomplishments in terms of establishing IIT as a very respected brand worldwide for quality technical education. But at the same time, it is not just IIT or IIT Kharagpur, but all such education institutions or institutions of higher learning in particular, if not the schools, they will be confronted with the question that has the purpose been achieved? And number two, more important question, that what is the journey ahead considering the transformational landscape that we are having in education and research. So coming back to the accomplishment part, if we think about IIT Kharagpur's impact, IIT Kharagpur, I think the greatest impact is that IIT Kharagpur could establish the brand and credibility of the entire IIT system. So I would imagine that IIT Kharagpur, although I do not have a clear idea of the kinds of brainstormings that went into before the institute was established, but I could sort of guess that IIT Kharagpur was a sort of an experimental approach to see whether this IIT as a model would succeed or not, or would withstand the test of time or not. Now, from that era, for a few years, IIT Kharagpur was the only IIT. And then the next few first generation IITs came up. And from then to now, with 23 IITs, I have reasons to believe that IIT Kharagpur had the success of establishing the credibility and impact of IIT as a system, for which it was subsequently scaled up by all the governments, which came one after the other. So that is in terms of as a brand. But in terms of outcome, I would say that IITs are, of course, known for very famous alumni. That means uh, there are so many great alumni who have graduated from IIT Kharagpur in particular and the entire IIT system. And when I mention IIT system, I also consider IISc as a part of that ecosystem, similar system, which has sort of produced what I would say is world famous alumni. So in that way, since these alumni are very well established and many of them are global icons in their own areas, I would consider that as a very significant benchmark of IIT success in inculcating the kinds of education that will make the IIT students having the capabilities, or I would say the skills, the life skills, and the knowledge all together to succeed in the bigger canvas of professional life. That is, I would say, a success, but with everything, there is a self criticism. If you see the building, in fact, the building at the backdrop of is the main building of IIT Kharagpur, which is showing in this way because it is illuminating or it is being illuminated with nice lighting. Now, what is written here is dedicated to the service of the nation, and it is a very significant statement. And being the first IIT, I would consider that nation building has been one of the very significant objectives of establishing IITs, and in this case, nation building through education and technology. So, in that way, I would say that while the entire IIT system has offered a lot of promise for that, we are yet to deliver those kinds of outcomes which will place us into that league of nation builders. This is number one. Number two is the transforming change in the mindset of the new generation. And we should have the significant, what I would say, adaptation to not just navigate through those requirements, but also giving a new direction, typically in the backdrop of our Platinum Jubilee, to give a new direction to the entire higher education ecosystem of the nation. I may give one particular example. So, for a long period of time, the placements have considered to be very important benchmarks of success of IIT students. And in the media and several other platforms, the day one from which the placement season starts on every year in December, on the 1st of December, the entire interest or focus comes to the viewpoint of what is the salary of someone who is getting a job out of the campus placement through our career development center. And very similar things come for internship. So what I realize is that while this is a very important and significant benchmark, it is perhaps not establishing a unique identity of IITs as compared to any other institution which focuses on the placement of students. So the transformational initiatives that I think IIT Kharagpur in particular and other all senior IITs should take is to migrate from the viewpoint of job seekers to job creators. And many of our alumni have been very successful in creating jobs, but this has not become a culture of the entire IIT ecosystem. And transforming from job seekers to job creators will require transformations in the educational landscape, that means curriculum, transformation in the research mindset, that is how research can be applied for all such purposes, and transformations in perceiving entrepreneurial journey. So if we have the entire IIT pathway from these 75 years still further forward with these pointers in mind, and of course the challenge in providing the required type of education in the backdrop of the AI era, when most of the educational components are either freely or with a cost available in the web and through various other sources, so that the style and the content with which the teachers have been habituated in teaching the courses, that also requires a transformational relook. So with all these, my summary to the answer of this question is that while I would definitely try to state that IITs, in particular IIT Kharagpur, has achieved very, very significant feat in terms of establishing the brand and establishing the quality both. We still have some way to go to introduce those transformational initiatives which will set us apart as compared to the rest as we proceed or march towards the next several years, maybe another 25 years, complete 100 years of our journey.
Thank you, Professor. You referred to the style of teaching. And I have a question that's related to that. Since you have been one of the most visible faces as part of the national program on technology enhanced learning, I wanted to check with you if you can tell us a little bit about that experience and what that has taught you so far about how young students, young engineers are learning today, and maybe what needs to change in terms of the pedagogy at IITs, in terms of the style of teaching at IITs.
Yeah, so this I will try to answer in different parts, because these are related but a bit different. So I'll start with the NPTEL, the first question. Yes, NPTEL, I would say, is one of the transformational happenings in the IIT ecosystem. And we must appreciate and accept that NPTEL has democratized IIT quality education. So when we imagine IITs, currently there are so many, about 23 IITs. The question is that how many students we can cater. The scalability is still limited. The reason is that every IIT has a limited number of seats. And if you count over or integrate over the entire IITs and IISc, there will be a very small fraction of the number of eligible students who are outgoing students from college, from school, to higher education and interested for IIT education. And also the second level of students, that means the ones who want to go for even higher education, masters and PhD. So what NPTEL did, and my own experience tells, I have recorded my first NPTEL lectures in 2008, and long back. And when I looked into the NPTEL framework by myself, I thought that I have certain things to contribute. And my first lectures on NPTEL, they were on fluid mechanics, undergraduate fluid mechanics, and very, what I would say, nostalgic, because some of the students in sitting in the benches or seats in those classes, they are now reasonably senior faculty members of IIT, and including our own IIT and several other places. So for the first time, I wanted to introduce something. Prior to that, NPTEL lectures were all, if you have followed the early lectures, the professors used to write on a sheet of paper, and there is a camera which is focusing, from the top. So it's a bit of a static system. And very lightly, I used to say that a professor can also do some cheating, quote unquote, carry a book and write something there. And while we punish our students so much for malpractice, this I felt that that is not a good natural practice for a teacher, because a teacher's main impact on a student is if the teaching is spontaneous and engaging. No matter what technology you are using, be chalk and talk or this virtual reality, augmented reality, whatever. But this engagement with the students is very important. So what I emphasized on is that I would rather teach in the normal classroom style. In those days the camera systems and all were not that advanced. So what I had to do is to sort of almost urge the people, who were managing the studio at that point of time, to develop a system where on a podium I could move and write on a whiteboard, and that could be recorded. And to make sure that my movement was not erratic, they fixed up a wire with me, almost like the tail of an animal, so that you have a restricted degree of freedom. And if you move too much, you will feel a pressure, and you cannot move further forward. And but then I realized that it is a very important opportunity. And according to my knowledge, that was the first NPL video lecture which was created with a classroom time type experience. And I got that motivated looking into some of the MIT this open uh, courses. So when I found that these were reasonably, our lectures were reasonably well organized, not just my lecture, several others. And from then onwards, I think if I count perhaps around 10 NPTEL different courses I have, recorded and taught. So my overall experience is that it has given rise to an entire different set of students of IIT education who do not directly belong to IIT. Whenever I go to different places at the airport or maybe some event, someone comes, maybe offers a pranam, or even brings up a some notebook and say give an autograph. So I have never considered myself to be a very sort of celebrated personality. I always wanted to be a bit on a low tone and be within myself. And but having said that, I realized that these are reflections of some of the impacts. And even now, just a few days back, I met someone in the airport as I was going to buy some food at the airport. And I found someone came and said, you are Professor Suman Chakraborty, and I am so much thankful to your heat transfer course, and I'm, in this particular job where I use your knowledge to get the job. And I felt that these are sets of students whom we would never know. Many people write from foreign countries. Typically we feel, see, the challenge with Indians in many ways is that we are very good followers but not very good leaders. So we always would like to sort of emulate what foreign countries are doing, and if we are doing good, we say that we are at par world standard. But what are the things that we could introduce which would make us class apart from the rest? So one such thing, I found that some of the NPTEL lectures, some of the students who write from the foreign countries, you may be knowing that in their PhD system, they have a very strong, at least in the US, they have a very strong qualifying exam or comprehensive exam concept where they are asked to answer very challenging questions, either through a interview or viva type of exam or a written exam. And these are not standard textbook questions. These are questions which will test your learning, understanding, and sort of bit of creative formulation of problems and all. And many students write that they have they could successfully go through these exams by listening to my lectures, NPTEL lectures. So what I thought is that NPTEL has really democratized the education. And now if you are familiar with the current status, In fact, NPTEL courses are considered to be creditable courses. That means that one can do NPTEL courses with the certification, exam, and all. These grades can be considered as a part of the evaluation by any accredited university. So all what it means is that hypothetically, a kind of virtual university would be very much possible, where all the lectures are NPTEL or SWAYAM or similar platform, and there are teachers only as mentors to help the students to maybe go through the lectures and address some of the queries which in the video recorded mode is not that easy. So in that way, it is possible to provide quality educational input in a system which does not naturally have the kinds of teaching human resources that the IITs or IISc would have. Now, my final point about NPTEL is that once we have understood that NPTEL, it is getting into a very successful mode. One question that always haunted me, that can't we use NPTEL to democratize the education more to the grassroots in a way that try to use regional language for that. All of us are familiar with the National Education Policy 2020, and using regional knowledge as a regional language as a means of learning the subjects of higher education has been one of the pointers in that. I have heard various criticisms, and what I consider is that any reform there will be criticism, and one has to take into it in a balanced way. While higher education with vernacular language is not something which is to be recommended, but it is also true that for certain subjects which require conceptual learning, the conceptual learning sometimes gets augmented if a student who up to class 12 has learned the subject in a regional language, is otherwise quite talented, and has entered into the IIT system and is getting lost simply because that the English medium by which the subject is taught is not easily understandable. And none of us have English as mother tongue. So we may speak English for our own professional purposes, but I don't think there is a shame of someone who is suffering because of the challenge in English communication. There is always a scope to learn, and it is good to learn, but it is not a crime if a person starting with education in science and technology is a bit behind with English, and we should help the person. Now, helping the person in a scalable manner is difficult. There are so many regional languages, and even if we prioritize, say for example, we are from West Bengal, IIT Kharagpur, but I cannot sort of enforce that the teachers start teaching parallel in Bangla. That is impossible, and in an IIT system, that is not desirable. But why couldn't we have small classes or tutorial types or certain specialized classes where the classes are adapted in regional language? And it could be done in two ways. One is you can do it the raw lecture in regional language, but it is not scalable, because in all subjects in all regional languages you will not get uh, academically qualified person and also good in the language, or maybe at all knowing the language. So partly with the contents which are delivered directly, but partly with the contents where AI is used for a dynamic adaptation and translation, and perhaps a bit of fine tuning of that using someone knowledge on the particular language. So in that way, we have come up with a series of meetings with IIT Madras NPTEL, and I am very pleased to confirm that IIT Madras has, their internal system has approved one MOU, and IIT Kharagpur system is now looking into that. The director of IIT Madras and myself, we have very carefully looked into that and very enthusiastic about it. We are going to start a new era of NPTEL jointly in collaboration, IIT Madras and IIT Kharagpur, and also similar courses like, for example, the BS in AI, data science, etc., where we will have the regional language being one of the mediums of instruction, and with a pilot it will be done in Bangla medium with IIT Kharagpur as the lead institution. So I would say that it would be a significant milestone in democratizing the spirit that the NPTEL, SWAM, or similar such platforms try to do at absolutely free of cost. Spread the language, spread the education in a language agnostic manner to the grassroots level, haves and have nots. There is no difference. Someone just has to have an internet connection. And nowadays, that kind of internet connection with the service providers are available. Smartphones are also available. So if we have these kinds of, say, for example, AI lectures in Bangla given by some of the best IIT faculty, I think it will be transformational in terms of spreading the impact of the highest level of education to the bottommost part of the pyramid. So this is about NPTEL, its past and its future direction. We have also introduced a very interesting concept in NPTEL called as concept capsule. So I'm giving you an example. Let us say that in class 7, 8, we learn Newton's laws of motion. In some way, may not be the mathematical, but qualitative way. Class 7, 8, then 9, 10 also we learned that. 11, 12 also we learned that. In higher education, someone studying science engineering also learns that. Someone doing PhD or postdoc in mechanics also has to use it. Now the levels are different, but there are what I would say connected concepts. And if the concepts are misleading or not appropriately inculcated into the student, that void or gap is very difficult to fill up when the person goes to the highest level. So we try to introduce small, these are very short videos. We understand that modern generation students are not really having the attention span that previous generation students used to have. This is because of the extreme use of smartphones and other engaging internet amenities and amusement programs. That means that with this short attention span, if we have say some short modules, capsules by very, very experienced and established faculty, which will cover in a great manner from school level concept, which is the most important, because there you learn the essence in the most simple way. So there, if you learn wrong things, that wrong thing carries within you for the rest of your educational life. So that is one type of lecture that we have started in an experimental phase. So this is one of the additional things that we have done with the NPTEL or SWAM framework, and I think that all these will us take our journey of the NPTEL or related platforms. I would say the great contribution from the government of India to spread this spirit to such kind of people who do not naturally have access to this kind of quality education. So that is my answer to your NPTEL and related question. Now the other question is a bit broader, that what is about the curriculum and other things which we may be thinking of. So if you want me to answer it right now, I can answer, or otherwise if you have any intermediate questions, I would be very happy to take.
I had one more question, sir, before we leave it open to my colleagues here. I wanted to, since you've taken charge as director, one key area that you focused on is offering mental health support to students, right? You've appointed a dean of student well-being. There's the concept of campus mothers. There's an app that's focusing on mental health. So, so beyond these, these sort of initiatives at the level of individual institutions, what are deeper systemic issues that you would like to see addressed as part of a long-term approach towards student mental health?
I would say that this is a very, very important question which has to be addressed holistically. By holistically, I mean that not just one higher education institution. It is a complete journey of a modern era student from India who aspires to get into that institution. And for our example, be that institution as one of the premier IITs. I'm just taking a particular example because there is so much of diversity into this consideration that possibly if we focus on IITs, we can reasonably answer, try to answer the issues. So when a student gets into higher classes and a typical Indian good student, a typical Indian good student, whom sometimes very in a light manner I call as a goody goody boy or a goody goody girl, is a student who, according to the society and according to the parents, has a potential of getting into some of the very premier institutions. And how their potential is understood, they are doing very well school exams, and they are showing all the promises of delivering the success. They are very focused in whatever they are doing, exam preparation and all these things. So they are very, at an appropriate time, they are brought into the ambit of this so-called coaching. Now, this coaching is something which has only one purpose, by some way, which I would better say by hook or crook, get you into the dream institution. Now, to do that, you are taught certain skills, and you are, in a very nice manner, able to absorb or assimilate those skills because you are quite an intelligent student, and you are very diligent, hardworking, you study well, your teachers whatever work they give, these things, you do well. But now this blessing of the quality that you have actually becomes your curse. So you are being subjected to a complete one dimensional education system where you have a sole direction of uh, say performing in the be it JEE, be it GATE, or any other form of nationally competitive exam, and in the process there is no emphasis at all in developing your other skills, including soft skills. That means communication, resilience, life skills, or ability with the group or group activities, or coping up with normal ups and downs that are inevitable in anybody's journey. So these things, and compounding to that becomes one factor which comes very strongly is what I would say as parental pressure. And what I am telling you is not my own perception. We actually appointed a high power external committee to look into the different holistic aspects of the mental health challenges. And they, one particular committee which had one of the top mental health experts from the country as the chairperson. What she told uh, is that 80% of the students whom the committee interrogated, and these were non-tutored students, randomly selected from different sectors, different hostels and different courses. 80% of them said that they were directly or indirectly stressed because of parental pressure. So you could imagine, you could be very surprised that where is the parental pressure? They have all come to IIT. Now, it is very difficult to imagine that the parents who were insisting on their performance up to class 12, suddenly they will switch off. And the switching, it is very interesting or surprising. Either they are completely switched on, that means a lot of pressure is being applied to their children, to get what I would say the return of investment. That so much, time, energy, money has been invested on them, so they should get a highly paid. It's a vicious cycle, a highly paying job. The other thing is that some students get completely disconnected, and some parents, and then these students, their children, they can get directed into certain directions which can give rise to certain mental health issues, educational issues, and so many behavioral challenges, addiction challenges, so many other things which could happen. So this entire thing, for every such child, who comes to IIT Kharagpur or any other IIT for higher education or any other premier institute for higher education has already an initial condition which is set up by the society, the peer pressure, the socio-economic broad perspectives, and therefore we cannot consider their mental health or well-being in an isolated manner. And my summary or summarized realization is that the main challenge that we are seeing them to face is that while they all have reasonably high IQ, most of them are having shortage of EQ. The standard EQ factors which would enable them to navigate or to be there in the transforming world of the requirement of what the situation demands in the professional world. In IITs, to help them with their mental health and all, we can relax and dilute many things, in terms of the stringency in certain educational aspects and all those things. We can do it. There's no problem. And we have already, taken significant steps towards doing that. But we have to realize one thing, that these people anyway will be exposed to the outer world where we will no more be there, their parents will no more be there as a safeguard when they are having difficulties maybe with their teammates, with their bosses, and so many other things. Sudden challenge has come in at the office. So what we will, how they will manage with this. So it requires a significant uplifting in giving in imparting them life skill lessons, not by structured coursework, but by engagement activities, starting from the lower school till the highest level of the education system, where group work, engagement activities, participatory activities, and many other activities which would remove their isolation, distress them, and make them feel engaged as a part of the broader world where they are thinking about minor, actually minor, but significant to them issues. They will sort of, what I would say, get out of that illusion. And nowadays, the illusion is compounded by the social media factors, where you no more have real friends, you have mostly virtual friends. They post, nobody has the check whether those posts are correct. People are, linking success or linking achievement by the number of likes that people get in a social media post. So, in such a challenging scenario, managing the mental health or well-being of 17,000 plus on students who have come from diverse socio-economic backgrounds and also cultural backgrounds, it is, I would say, an impossible job despite our best efforts in the holistic well-being of students. So my humble submission would be that it requires a very significant but a very silent nationwide movement. I am giving the stress of silent, the word silent, because with the present situation, my clear understanding is that while important mental health is very critical, it has got into a kind of attention in a way that in some cases it has started misfiring. So it is very unfortunate that suicide has become a weapon of certain things to deliberate on, or it has become like a business. Every time such things happen, I get, not me as an individual, but as a director, the emails, WhatsApp messages from various companies which would write the first paragraph in a very empathetic tone. And in the second paragraph, they will say what are the things that they have, the packages and all. And to save their, in my mobile where I have so many other identities, unfortunately, I had to write suicide business company. And, this is something which I feel very disturbing, that this is something which is a catastrophe to the students, it is catastrophe to the parents, it is catastrophe to teachers like us. We are also parents. I am not like an isolated person in just teaching. And it is a heartbreaking thing to find these things are happening. And when these things are happening, when these things are being directed to a mode where it becomes commodity in terms of addressing the root, it actually directs to something else. I would narrate one particular example. In the very recent unfortunate incidents, one of the unfortunate incidents that happened at IIT Kharagpur campus, I found that there was a WhatsApp message from one of the students. She is writing to her friend that today I thought that I would commit suicide, but I saw someone else is doing, so therefore I am not doing it. And then it was circulated through some of the internal WhatsApp groups. And when I looked into that very very seriously and asked people to look into that, then the outcome came that it was all out of fun that was attempted. Now, you all are very, very sort of what I would say responsible persons from the media. Would you consider this to be a fun people, deliberating on such things? So we have to strike a balance. I think we have to come up with a holistic transformational, change in the overall learning pattern, educational pattern, starting from junior school. I will be, very much obliged to contribute in my own thought process, whatever I have learned, and also, during my role, the small tenure that I had so far, at IIT Kharagpur, and my learnings on related topics, and I'm sure other directors and other people who are
So,
more senior, they
a
will do.
colleague of mine has a related question on mental health, and since we're on the topic, Alind has a question. Alind, would you like to?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, sir. My name is Alin. I work with the Explain team of the Indian Express. Sir, I have a question that, given that we are talking about mental health, and if I'm not wrong, by September, IIT Kharagpur saw at least four suicides. I just wanted to ask if IIT Kharagpur has decided to or has got in touch with or hired trained psychologists or therapists who students
Yes,
can talk to.
yes. We have hired both trained psychiatrists,
Hmm,
psychologists, and
hmm,
an entire professional team of mental health management. It's a external professional team, and they are residing with the IIT Kharagpur system. See, everything has a learning. What we have realized that every such mental health aspect may have certain triggers or may have certain issues which may not be detectable so easily in the naked eye of other common people who are observing these persons. So all these suicide, things that have happened, although many of our interventions we did not really want to do in a reactive manner. The Setu app related program that I took up, that I took up after immediately after joining IIT Kharagpur, not as a reactive thing of anything else, but I thought that it is important for a holistic well-being, even for students who will never even think of suicide, forget about committing it. Now we have to imagine that out of 17,000, maybe one or two such, or maybe 10, percentage-wise very insignificant, but number-wise every single number is significant. Just like a medical world, even one person's loss of life, should be, we should try our best to prevent. So in that way, we have intensified, because we have learned from these that where are the tightenings that we have to do. So in terms of technology, we have introduced certain technologies for screening of such vulnerable personnel, and we have introduced human resources at various levels, starting from volunteers, student volunteers, faculty, staff volunteers, then professional psychologists, professional psychiatrists, and entire professional team. And the approach I have changed, rather, we collectively have changed from like someone going to the counseling center and seeing to those professional people whom we are calling as buddies of the students. They are reaching out, and like a friend they are trying to learn the issues, and in that way they are trying to, what I would say, get more into the preventive aspects rather than what I would say as the reactive aspects. So these are all which have been learnings, and we have tried to do. But as I my previous answer, or the answer to the previous part of the question, you realize that it is not just IIT's job alone. It is, there are lots of things that we need to fix, and I'm afraid IIT alone can take care of only a small fraction of that, which we are trying our best to at least void that full thing, to breach that full void. But all in all, I would say that our effort is maximum, but uh, it is perhaps not good enough, and it requires a holistic approach, including sort of creating the awareness among parents, the broader society. And we have also, started inspirational interactions with the very established alumni, who are very successful and very reputed at other places, and other forms of engagement activities, which will take such depressed students to come out of their shell and contribute for a broader purpose. I believe that with all such holistic measures, we will get some positive effect. But I do not, envisage an immediate, full transformation, given the large system, and it takes time to adjust and get into this framework.
Got it. So we have questions on your work, your research so far. Anuradha ma'am has a question on COVID app.
Hello, sir. I'm going to ask a little technology-related question, taking you
Sure,
back
sure.
to the COVID pandemic. Sir, this COVID app, low-cost portable machine, which was designed and you were involved in it. So, what happened afterwards? Was it scaled up? I mean, can it also be used to detect diseases like dengue,
Yes,
TB,
yes, yes.
etc.?
This
And
is very
how
important.
ready are we to, how ready is that
Yes,
to detect future pandemics? And
yes.
I'm not sure whether it can replace RT-PCR. So I just thought I'd ask you this because you were majorly involved with that
This is
technology, sir.
no, this is of course a very important question, and I was of course very much thankful that at that time you covered the development of COVID app very enthusiastically, and I'm glad to mention that we have advanced significantly further forward. And I will tell you that at the COVID period, what we tried to achieve, what was the learning, and where we are using that learning in terms of developing the technologies for the present presently active infectious diseases and possibly future pandemics. So the entire learning of COVID app and what COVID app was about. So RT-PCR test, we all learned that, we all know also that it was, and it has always been, a resource intensive test. So someone talking about, say, even a low cost RT-PCR kit, which is a set of reagents to do the test, it has nothing to do with democratizing RT-PCR, because you still require the RT-PCR machine, and you still require the human resources who will run the system and the test done. So the real democratization would not be just the kit, but the entire technology and the human resource ecosystem, which can do such a test in a resource limited setting. And that is what the COVID app test wanted to do. So we built up a machine which was known as COVID app machine at that point of time for rapid detection of COVID, which could take the sample, the nasal or the oral swab or nasopharyngeal or oropharyngeal, and get the uh, amplification of the DNA. So it converted the RNA to the DNA and amplified the DNA in an isothermal or constant temperature setup, which was controlled by the machine, and then get the test result by a smartphone based analysis of the signal, which is a color signal generated from the reaction. And the entire test could be conducted in a small box, which is a handy box and can be used with someone with minimal training. So the entire learning that we had was very useful for any other such test which we wanted to do on nucleic acid, say any DNA based test. Now the COVID app the technology that we developed, it was actually the COVID app. We gave it a catchy, outer name, but the name of the technology that was there in the backbone of it is known as PINAT, PINAT, which was invented at IIT Kharagpur. So this technology was awarded the US patent. It was granted US patent based on our work, and the satisfaction is that it's a completely indigenous US patent. There was no such contribution from anyone, from outside the system. So now, at that time when we got that advancement, and it also got transferred to companies as technology. By that time, COVID was no more. I was talking about mental health as a business. So COVID was also a business at that point of time. So it was no more a business. So any commercial organization would not like to move forward with something where it doesn't have a business prospect, no matter how great the technology is. And if you see the technology-based businesses, all flourishing in the entire world, not necessarily the best technology is getting the best business traction. It is just like what matches with the void in the market need. So in that way, very fortunately, we have been working with two important government bodies. One is DSIR for one of the flagship projects called CRTDH, which is a common research and technology development hub on affordable healthcare, and ICMR on a center of excellence on healthcare, both housed at IIT Kharagpur. So with ICMR advising and with the help of our industrial partners, what we have done is we have adapted that PINAT technology for TB detection. And TB detection is one of the grand challenge problems, and it will remain as one of the grand challenge problems. And there are two aspects to it. One is telling whether someone has TB or not, which is a TB diagnostic or screening. And then once that is done, testing for the multiple drug resistance. Because in many cases, antibiotic resistance is something which is a curse in the modern, infectious disease management. So someone who is being treated with, for TB with, two common medicines. So there are two medicines which are common, rifampicin and isoniazid. So now, if these two medicines are being applied and the medicine is not working for the patient, then it can, then only it can give rise to what I would say, significant complications leading to possible, life-threatening. So whether that particular drug which the doctor is planning for the patient is going to work in terms of the specific drug as an entity and what should be its ideal dosage. So that, whether there is any significant resistance in the body of the patient. So that aspect of the test now we are developing after we have succeeded in establishing the basic TB diagnostics. That means someone who has TB or not. So we have been doing work in collaboration with ICMR and the DSIR under these two programs, and with a lot of support of NIRT, that is the National Institute for Research in Tuberculosis in Chennai, and we have been working with the help of a big team that we have, and a very significant person in my team, Professor Arindam Mondol from the Bioscience Biotechnology Department, and we are taking forward that to the next level for such infectious diseases. So the summary to the answer of this question is that the technology with which we started COVID app is now significantly generalized as a platform technology, which requires test specific adaptation and significant work. But the technology by itself, see, I'm an engineer, I am not really any medical expert, and I do not understand the individual nitty-gritties of the diseases to an extent as a doctor would understand. But what I understand is that in terms of technology, there is no great difference between what is needed for COVID or what is needed for TB or what is needed for dengue or chikungunya or several other forms of vector-borne or other infectious diseases. So all these can be addressed by a sort of platform technology. That means a generic technology which can be adapted for multifarious purposes. And our team has already developed such technology. Any particular what I would say as company or other organization interested to work with us with such technology, either collaboratively or through technology transfer, we are very happy and open. Another part of the work, I gave TB as one example. Another is that general screening of infectious diseases. These upper respiratory tract infections. Every year, a certain time we call as flu season. I know children in schools get affected, and it creates a big problem. Because infection spreads from one person to another person by simple airborne or fluid-borne transmission. So in such situations, this kind of screening can be very helpful. So we are developing a respiratory infection panel. There are such panels actually available, but in the high-end lab resource like RT-PCR, we are trying to develop a simplified panel of that type, very similar to COVID, which would try to isolate such patients who have such potential developing upper respiratory tract infections. So in that way, I would say that COVID app has given us a lot of learning, and be it mental health or be it COVID, my learning, as a student, through my entire life, is every challenge is an opportunity. COVID gave us a challenge, and it gave us an opportunity of learning these things. And in fact, mental health has given us a lot of challenge. So when I joined the institute, I found that within a few days I had to address these kinds of mental health extreme scenarios, which I never thought when I had a framework of perhaps I would imagine myself to be a candidate of as the director of IIT Kharagpur. I never imagined that within this only few months, this would become a nightmare, not just for me but for my entire team. But I have taken it positively. This is a challenge which has given us opportunity of learning new things, and I hope that we'll have positive transformation in the years to come.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Before you took charge as director, there was a case of Faizan Ahmed who died in a mysterious circumstances, and Calcutta High Court formed a SIT to investigate that case. Can you give us some light of the case and the investigation?
I think that I do not have a very detailed understanding of the case of Faizan Ahmed. I mean, detailed in a sense that at that time I was not in that particular aspect of administration. So it is quite understandable that I did not have any access to the paperwork. But later on, what I have learned is that two or rather I would say only one important pointer that made this case a bit different as compared to several other cases is that in this case there was a suspected issue of homicide. Suspected. We really do not know what has happened, and until and unless we get a full clarity, I am in no position to tell exactly what happened. But this was considered, or rather on this unfolded subsequently, to be, of course, one very unnatural student death, but not also unnatural in the way in which suicides have either taken place before or after that. And this one, which cannot perhaps be classified as a typical case of those other methods of losing life, I would better say. Therefore, it required what I would say significant probing, and I do not know what was the administrative protocol at that point of time. But whenever I have joined, I have always followed that protocol, that after any such incidents, which we always, every time it happens, my heart breaks, and I try to pray to God that God, let me not face such a situation anymore. But God will not always listen to what we are praying. But then what we do is that once that happens, we try to go through a protocol where the first part of the protocol is filing an FIR. The the protocol is simply out of common sense. Although now Supreme Court has established it as a protocol, but I would say a common sense. When we file an FIR, when we find that something that has happened which cannot be explained by natural observation logic. So say someone who who has been suffering from a disease and there are natural consequences and that person has passed away. We usually never have an FIR because the circumstances leading to such a miserable thing, they have been reasonably well observed and understood. And in that way, even if they are not natural, they have been naturalized. But something where there is so much of question and people do not have an idea of what triggered that, the natural response would be to file an FIR. And that is what we are doing in these days. I think in that era, I cannot blame any administration. See, blaming administration is the easiest thing to do. But when you are in administration, you will realize that there are many factors which come in the administration. So possibly at that time, there was not substantial sensitization of the requirements of the protocols through which one would ideally and one would in reality have to go through to decode the mysteries. And because it could not be done at that point of time, possibly because such administrative protocols did not exist, that unfolded further questions, which came up when his parents and other things, others started putting significant questions, came up as a lawsuit or a legal item in the High Court, and then things started. The further autopsy was done, and certain things started unfolding. So what I would say is that anything that has happened of that kind, we cannot undo it. A life which has gone has gone. But from my side, as the current custodian and administrative representative of the institution, I can say that the institution will offer and is in fact offering full cooperation in all the investigations related to that, with absolutely hiding nothing. And in that way, if the real culprits who influenced that loss of life, if on evidence, not by suspicion, suspicion is something which I do not give any importance. See, if there is no evidence, out of suspicion many people can tell many things. But if there is evidence and such culprits are identified, IIT Kharagpur will of course propose the highest possible the kind of action should be taken because of this kind of incidents which led to this catastrophic phenomenon and catastrophic event which made us lose our very beloved student. So we would be very much in cooperation, and we are eagerly looking forward to the entire investigation completing to an extent that it no more remains a suspicion. It really identifies who are the culprits, and then the highest level of action we will recommend for that. Of course, IIT is not what I would say empowered enough to get into that, but definitely we are in full support of that.
Thank you, sir.
We have a question from Anona.
Hello. Sir, I will bring you back to your work. I had a couple of questions regarding, you've mentioned COVID app, and when we look at such healthcare technology, coming from an IIT, and we have several such examples. The challenge is to then get it into the market. So, what are the problems that we face from inventions happening in these labs to actually making it to the market, especially if it's from an institute which is, say, not an IIT or an IISc? And the second question is regarding antimicrobial resistance. Like you mentioned, it is a big challenge. And you're looking at, of course, resistance patterns in TB, but also point of care tests for such resistance could be very important. So, where are we at in terms of diagnostics for detecting at the bedside of a patient what antibiotics might work for them? And again, how soon can we see such tests actually becoming a part of the patient care?
No, very important question. So I will try to answer the first one, the lab to market first. So if you see, I would not say that IITs are in a great advantageous position in a way, because it's a bit of a cultural issue. So, if you are working in a lab, and this I have learned from my own hard experience, uh, I am a very simple-minded person, and I would be, not hesitant to really confess the kinds of mistakes that I did when I was working on such technologies. So my impression, at the very beginning when we started working on healthcare technologies, is that we would develop some technology in the lab which we will validate and develop a prototype, and there would be companies or maybe startups which will take that to the commercialization. Overall, it's okay, but there were fundamental mistakes. Two mistakes. Number one, this entire journey of lab to market is not really the ball game of a professor or an academic researcher or a research scholar or a student. Why? Because it requires different what I would say facets of understanding and different facets of strategic advancement, out of which a professor will be conversant in maybe one or two areas. The other areas professor can develop with experience, but cannot match with a person who is a professional in that aspect. Now, the first thing where even the professor can make a difference. So when I first developed my first blood test products in the lab, I never kept into mind that these products are ultimately targeted for use at a place which is not a lab. It is a place which is a point of care setting outside control lab, maybe in a small room where there is no AC, no unreliable power supply, there is extreme dirt, dust, humidity control is not there, there is no specialized freeze or refrigerator for storage of delicate materials, there is no established supply chain of materials, there is no trained human resource for undertaking the test, unlike our qualified scholars or technicians whom we have in the lab. So all in all, how can we expect a technology which is working so well in the lab because of the benefit of these factors? Once those benefits are taken away, it's like a life support and someone is surviving. You take away the life support, will the person survive? May or may not, you really do not know. So how do we know? Or rather, how do we assure, if not fully to a large extent, that my design and development, this I'm telling fully as a technologist, not in any other way. How do we assure that at my design and development level, I try to take those factors into account, that at some point of time, it will enter into the market with a particular pitch point. That means it will address some unmet needs. So if I want to do that, from the very beginning, I have to combine with either a startup or an industrial partner, or a partner which is sufficiently conversant with these requirements for commercializing such products. And that early combination of a scientific or a technology group with a business development group or commercialization group, and their back and forth sort of communication at the early level when the technology is there in the hand professor or an academic group, and the later level when the professor hands it over to another team, is like baton passed on them, but the professor can still handhold and give technology inputs. So it is a great challenge for many professors to do like that. So because the technology with which they have been working, good or bad or whatever, they are very possessive about that, like parents are very possessive about their children. So in that way they often are hesitant to release that technology at the right timing to the right entity for commercial success. So all these things, if these are organized, and and the kinds of technologies, the technologies from my research group, which have by now come to the market, they are available in the form of market products. I have utilized this, what I would say, hand burning learning, and in that way, I have tried to make sure that from the very beginning, we are tied up with the startup whom we have mentored to bring that product, and at the same time we leave it to them at the stage where we find that they are more suitable ones, and that continuous seamless coordination with neither of the parties dominating over the other and getting into a collaborative mode. And this dominance is also another important challenge. Professors have great snobbery. In the elite academic system, everyone, every little bit established professor thinks herself as Einstein or Madame Curie. But it's not like that. We are all very common people, and we are not working on rocket science. So we are trying our best to contribute to something, and we have lots of things to learn, from people. At the same time, so we should not apply our snobbery to some of the industrial people who may not be knowing exactly that thing that we have been teaching or researching over the years. At the same time, industry people should also get out of that, quote unquote, narrow mindedness of looking into immediate business, and instead they should be supportive in developing a bit, futuristic items which are currently nurtured on in the lab. And if this combination is done, I would say that it is just an ecosystem problem. It's a mindset problem. All the ingredients are there. And if we can do this properly, I have the dream that IIT Kharagpur and the ecosystem around that, with our new research park that we have established at Kolkata and several other such connected units, we would perhaps become an equivalent to second Silicon Valley ecosystem, this time in India and not from the west coast of US.
So this is Ritika. I have two questions. So the first is the government, and we've reported this today, is designing a new scheme which is aimed at bringing back Indian origin quote unquote star faculty from abroad, and this is obviously set against the backdrop of the interventions that the Trump administration is making, rather the interference in the higher education institutions there. We understand that IITs have been part of this discussion. My question is a big picture one. Essentially, what are the one or two specific institutional policy changes that you think are needed for such a scheme to work? While, of course, it's important to attract people with good work to their credit, but the key here is to also ensure that once they are here, that the institutions are able to retain them. So if you can give us a sense of the current state of play, what is India's ability to host and retain foreign faculty? And
yeah, I would say, okay, I think you may complete the second question and then.
No. Just the second part of that. What specific changes you think are required to ensure that a scheme such as this would actually work?
No, I would say that, at least in IITs, we have always had the provision of recruiting foreign faculty.
Right.
So it is not something new that, perhaps any IIT is exercising. And currently the system that we have is for a particular period. For example, possibly 5 years. As a director, I have tried to remember all the rules, but I may be, mistaken. But possibly 5 years, we can give a foreign faculty a contractual appointment, which is a contractual regular appointment. And a contractual regular and a full-time appointment, not a visiting, what I would say, advisory type of appointment. So, and that means that we already have the framework.
Right.
So, in this framework, I have seen people at different IITs joining and working quite successfully. I would say that it is not actually a matter of big concern whether the person is of foreign origin, Indian origin, or OCI. OCI, of course, Indian origin, but overseas, they are residents overseas. But overall, the most important thing is it's again attracting the best of the talents. To attract the best of the talents, we require a supportive system. The supportive system has to be encouraging, progressive, and compatible with the inspirations of the modern generation faculty. And this is true no matter whether we are hiring faculty from foreign places or faculty at from our own catchment area. It remains the same. So what I would say is that, like every challenge is an opportunity. This challenge of many personnel who are either having uncertainties in their jobs at foreign places, or maybe on the verge of or on the crisis of even potential losing of jobs. Of course, we are all positive about having them, but I wanted to insist upon this is that I would not like to consider IIT as a choice of the B team because I have not been in a position to get into the A team. This is how IITs cannot really get into the highest level of global excellence. That if we think in this way, even in the back of our mind, that someone who has been there in some X university, very famous in the world, but because of some administrative factors, maybe geopolitical factors, whatever. I do not want to get into that because I am not an expert in those areas. But something has happened and they are finding uncertainty. So they are thinking, and IIT is also accepting, IIT as a rehabilitation ground for them as an option B. So for some cases it's okay. But this itself shows that we are not really that excellent where people would automatically give us, as a choice. So we should create an ecosystem, not just salary. See, top intellectuals in the world are not simply bothered only with salary. You cannot just hold them with salary. They want an academic and research ecosystem, or a very vibrant, sort of ecosystem where they find a purpose for their, progression. They are not simply passive, going to class, teaching 2 courses, just for the sake of tick mark, supervising some students. Not like that. They are doing this entire thing out of their initiative, passion, vision, everything. So to attract these people, we must get out of our own mediocrity and find out mechanisms where we can not only catch them, but also nurture them with a lot of positivity, lot of opportunities, so that with a few such experiences and case studies, it is felt that IITs are not fallback options because someone is not getting settled into a foreign institute because of some challenge, and then taking it as a fallback option. So I would say that this kind of opportunity, this should be capitalized, but it should be capitalized in a way that it should not give rise to another class of citizen, who are quote unquote foreign but unsuccessful in the IIT ecosystem. It will neither help them nor help the IIT system. So what we should
You spoke
think
of
about, yes,
leaving,
yes.
sorry, Sorry,
Yes.
sir. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes. So that is what the point I wanted to bring up, that we should take this opportunity to build up a greater faculty attraction and retention ecosystem with policies, and also with several other things like infrastructure, liberalization of faculties, different modes of earning, and with all these things, and outreach, outer world activities, if we can do it nicely and open up certain areas where faculty would also like to work, in collaboration with us, they will actually like to come. And we have got one such faculty from MIT. I'm not naming the person, not of Indian origin. Someone who has been a pioneer in one particular technology, in the world. So we got that person as an international visiting faculty who will spend a lot of physical time in the next year at IIT Kharagpur to co-work with our students. And that person has come for a mixed set of reasons. So one is like the opportunity of working with the ecosystem, which has a lot of connection with the rural healthcare model, which will not be so easily available as a living lab in the places, in the labs, where they are familiar, where they work. Not only that, number two is that they are also very much attracted with the Indian culture and several other things, and that makes many of them sort of attracted to our educational ecosystem, and many of them have advised or supervised IIT graduates when they have gone for higher studies or postdoctoral, and they already know that the kind of intellectual strength which is there. So if we can brand and utilize all these opportunities and make a nice platform for faculty of the highest quality, irrespective of caste, creed, origin, religion, whatever, quality, excellence. I think that is the target that all IITs at this juncture, and typically the Gen 1 IITs, the older IITs, and IIT Kharagpur being the oldest, has the greatest of the responsibility to work on such faculty attraction platforms.
Right. So my second question is, we've seen, in the US how political shifts, especially for instance under Donald Trump, it has tested the independence of publicly funded institutions and universities. In India, too, IITs depend almost entirely on public money, or at least significantly on public money. My question is that, do you think that any publicly funded institution can ever be fully insulated from political influence?
I would let you know one thing. See, I am not negative about political, influence. See, one thing we have to keep in mind, that politics is a part of the entire human and societal development. So, political influence should not be isolated as the factors which are only impacting the public funded institutions. You go to the highest, most reputed of the industries. I'm not naming them. Some of the very top industry brands, which are famous, or for which India has, become famous worldwide. You ask their top leaders, you will find that how much they have to, what I would say, strategize based on the current, political situation, be the national or the geopolitical global overall. And this is the skill of any institution. And usually we talk about negative things. That means people lose out of that. How much people gain out of that, people do not talk about that. So, for example, think about IITs. We talk about IITs independence, and we are, of course, under direct governance of a federal government. If you see the plus point of it, the plus point of this is that the salary, the basic salary, the base salary that people can get without taking into account consulting jobs or advisory jobs, etc., the salary and the scholarship of a large number of students. That is assured by this process. And have we really compromised on anything? If I tell to my conscience, actually at IITs we have not compromised on anything. Wherever we have faltered on is about our elusive perception, because we have our board of governors, and our board of governors has huge power, tremendous authority to approve certain things. And regarding the federal government, we only have to comply with or align with certain national policies. And tell me about one institution, a private institution also, which does not have to abide by the national policies, with respect to the friendliness of certain countries, or sensitivity to the national security. So these are the things which are equally important no matter whether you are representing a government or private, any other form of institution. So leaving that apart, we have outstanding autonomy. Why we could not use outstanding autonomy? I have a clear answer to this. The answer from my learning is that we ourselves do not want to go out of our bounds, and we want to dump on any serious decision to someone else. So wherever we are empowered to take a decision collectively, I'm not telling individually, for the growth of the institution, we feel uncertain, we feel that no, at the end we are government salaried people. So we stay in our own comfort region and let government give us the directive. So that is the mentality. So if we get out of that mentality and try to innovate things which will generate revenue, which will generate sustainability, and which will drive us more and more towards, we are autonomous, but exercising our autonomy in different aspects, like getting endowment funds from alumni or other sources, streamlining and utilizing endowments for strategic purposes. Who prevents us? Nobody prevents us. Some IITs have also shown very good model of utilizing that in different ways. So overall, I would say that the kind of structure in which we are in, we are getting the benefit of what I call as benefit of Indian parenting. That the parents take care of the children till they come to that age of adulthood up to 18, and even after that, if they are in trouble, parents are taking care of that. So I would say that we are having the blessings of having one assured component which is coming because of the federal government support, and one uncertain component where sky is the limit. And if we set up the right model and go out of our bounds to work on that with the help of alumni, industry experts, and other professionals who are not there naturally within the IIT system, like strategists, or other forms of developers, that we can surely build up something which can exercise a significantly more level of academic and research autonomy as compared to what all of us have been exercising over the years.
So we'll just take two more questions before ending this. Sheen, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Good evening, sir. I'm Sheen from Indian Express Online Education Desk. I wanted to ask you that after the NEP, there's a lot of focus on mother tongue and regional languages. In fact, NPTEL and SWEM are also providing some courses on regional languages. So how are IITs and specifically IIT Kharagpur planning to introduce these engineering courses in regional or mother languages?
So just a supplement to her question, you have gone into this in the beginning of our conversation when you mentioned, gave the example of NPTEL and a program in Bangladesh. But when it comes to IITs specifically, sir, IITs have initially resisted it. There's just one IIT Jodhpur which has introduced a program in Hindi. As far as your institution is concerned, sir, are there any plans to introduce a program?
Yes. But what I would realize is that it has to be in a blended mode and in a phased mode. See, what IIT Jodhpur has done very good. But you have to realize one thing, that possibly I would imagine that majority of their teachers teaching these subjects are highly efficient in Hindi to an extent that they can teach these technical subjects in Hindi, not just colloquial Hindi. And majority of the students who are absorbing those lectures are also highly proficient in Hindi. Hindi being one of the major languages for certain parts of the country is a bit of an isolated example. But if you take away Hindi, other regional languages, which are dominant, at selective regions, it is impossible to scale up a teaching learning system where you have all the students accepting such a language and all the teachers in a position to deliver courses in that language. So what we have to do if we want to make it realistic, see where the problem comes. I tried to get into the core of the problem rather than creating a nice sensation by giving a tick mark to the NEP requirement. I'm never, in a belief of this tick mark type of thing. So the compliance that you give a tick. The essence of this NEP is a very significant component. What is that essence? Is someone who is coming from a vernacular medium, otherwise quite good in the technical subject, but is feeling a bit marginalized. So how do we help such marginalized people? We can always have small batches of tutorial mode activities where whatever is their difficulty in learning the mainstream classes, we can help them with supplementary learning. So my first consideration is that these cannot be as large as say 400 or 200 student classes to begin with. And then if you have teachers who are in a position to explain those in a more personalized manner, just like coaching classes. In a, say, school big class, there may be 60 students. In a very sort of personalized coaching, there may be 5 students. One particular tutor is teaching 5 students. So that personalized attention, and then you also communicate in a personalized manner. I can give you my own example. Say, when a Bangla speaking PhD student comes to me to understand something, and there is no one else with whom I am communicating, I typically use a mix of communicative Bangla and the technical things in English, so that it becomes more palatable for the student to follow. Now, this kind of model is very good for small groups. So my understanding is that when we implement this for our technical courses, which are regular courses running in IITs, we would pilot them for either such small tutorial groups taken from big classes or small classes by themselves, like small elective classes or number of students few. And we have to make sure that all those students are going to learn the subject in one particular language. So if we have a class of 5 students, one student Oriya, another student say Tamil, another Telugu, another Hindi speaking, another Bangla speaking, then this doesn't work. You cannot have for one student, one particular course going on. So overall thing is that if we have or if we can identify small cohorts of like language individuals, then that is the first pilot. And because IIT Kharagpur is such a big system, and we will find a systematic way of identifying this cohort, we will be able to find this out. And once we find it out, we will use this for training our AI-based method so that it can be upscaled, because it cannot be upscaled just by human intervention. How many such teachers you will have, and how many such languages you can add in your teaching? So if there are say 15 regional languages, is it at all feasible that 15 regional languages you teach your BTech classes? And I simply at IIT Kharagpur we cannot compensate it by teaching in Hindi, because we have to be sensitive to the regional languages. And the Hindi speaking people, everyone can speak in Hindi, not like that. But their acceptability of Hindi as a teaching learning subject of technical languages, it requires a next level of proficiency in Hindi. not just like colloquial conversation. So in that way, my understanding is that it will be a two-stage process. Stage one, piloting with small groups with certain cohorts, and stage two, utilizing that as a platform for developing AI-empowered frameworks, where the AI will perhaps give sort of a first cut translation, and for which currently certain software they are there, but certain things have to be fixed up. They are not equally working for all such subjects.
Right.
And train them. Every AI requires a training. So train those sort of regional language based AI automated interpreters with maybe say one lecture going in English and exactly the same lecture in Bangla, one given both given to similar level, similar class, same content, and then using that Bangla as a training of the feature of the AI, which we learn out of that, and perhaps learn better how to automate this for a case where we do not have an opportunity to train with real physical regional language.
So we'll take one last question from Deepto and then we'll wind it up.
Hi, sir. I'll just quickly ask. So, in your view, considering how students are engaging with engineering as a discipline, and the current government's insistent push on research and innovation and investment in that, do you observe an uptick in the number of students moving beyond placements, traditional routes, and competitive exams, and rather go more towards R&D, or is it still a very small group?
I would say that it is more of a, again, like when students are there at young age, they are mostly influenced by what the senior students or people, common people in society, they talk about career. Now, career is something. Career making doesn't have a single direction. Say a student in a particular class, based on the abilities, can develop successful career in certain ways. Here also there is a huge socio-economic factor. Someone who has chosen, say, mining engineering at IIT Kharagpur, if you ask that person, go to the person, then ask the person, will the person say that I am passionate to learn what happened in the mine and that is why I have studied mining? If this answer comes, I will be the happiest. I will say that our job is done. But this is not the reality. So the person, what answer the person will say? The person will say that I had a particular rank in JEE Advanced and I wanted to still study at IIT Kharagpur, and by combining my rank with opportunity of studying an engineering subject at IIT Kharagpur at the BTech level, I found this is the only option. So this is the reality. We have to accept all this. Now, with this, what can you expect in terms of this person making a career decision? I had many of my friends, and in fact many IIT alumni also you will see, that who have become very famous, the creative arts personalities, or even other forms of very successful personalities, where what they are doing and where they are successful does not have much correlation with what they have learned at IIT. We can accept this. Let us take the famous example that everyone will know, Mr. Sundar Pichai. So, being the CEO of Google, everyone knows his name. What subject did he study at IIT Kharagpur? Metallurgical and materials engineering. How much of that he is applying in his present job at Google? Perhaps only the wisdom that he carried, or only the learning, as a student in the IIT campus that he carried. That is what is helping him to be successful. All the skills that he acquired, through his student life, but not the metallurgy education, definitely. So but if you ask him that what prompted you to take this subject, he will also tell the same thing. That in my time in the JEE IIT JEE exam, this was my rank, and I wanted to study at IIT Kharagpur, and this is what my rank, sort of I do not know. I have never asked him, but I'm imagining this would be one of the most candid answers. So the whole answer here is that whether a student would be good for R&D or for a banking job or maybe journalism, who knows? I have one of my very known persons, who uh, studied in computer science and then migrated to journalism, and he is doing journalism very well. He writes. He has been writing over the years educational articles and all those things, and now he may be in a very high level position. In those sectors, and nowhere related to the engineering that he has learned. So overall, whether it is R&D or whether it is something else, what is missing in the Indian ecosystem is a proper career mapping approach. And it is impossible otherwise to convince on a student what career will be good for the student or not. So as a teacher, if I tell someone that if you go to a IT job, you will not do well. If you are sticking with education and research, you will do very well. The student will come out of my office and tell that professor is giving gyan, because he is a professor and he is not very much rich in life. He is also trying to make others like that. So the whole idea is that for making a career, be it R&D, be it technical, be it business driven, be it self-employed entrepreneurship, or other forms of creative and other engagements, which also make outstanding careers. What will be suitable for a particular person? This mapping, until and unless this happens, I would think that there would never be a right direction for the right person, and then this leads to frustration. I have seen many of our students from campus, they are getting into highly paid jobs. After several years, when they come back for some alumni meet and all, they will tell that, sir, I'm feeling a bit frustrated. I thought that, I'm getting into a job, I will progress. But perhaps if I would have made higher study in this area, I was so good in solving differential equations at some point of time. Now I feel it is completely useless and I feel a bit lost. So these kinds of things, which we call as middle age crisis, would commonly come to people after some years, when that hangover of campus placement and what the peers are telling, what the society is telling, that hangover is gone. Then you are on your own. You are in charge of what you are going to make yourself for the subsequent years, and then this crisis comes. So I would recommend that if we have a holistic career planning approach, which is disconnected from JE rank and all these things, that would help some of our students, to avail such opportunity. And I know that there are professionals around this. It may be expensive to hire such professionals, but a culture may build up, with small pilots, and I'm sure that people will get the benefit of it. When I was a student, I got 2-3 jobs from the campus interview, which were either technical or IT based. Because in those days there was IT boom, and even though I was not so-called literate in those subjects, still getting a job was not difficult. But then when I realize and I see myself of studies that I have been doing, it may be a coincidence. I have never really planned for what I am going. But where I am now, I think that my fullest potential can be exploited. Whatever is my fullest potential, there is an opportunity. But had I been in an IT job, I might have got salary 10 times than this, but my fullest potential, even close to the fullest potential, would not have been realized. This is my, what I would say, candid submission.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Chakraborty. We have taken up a lot more of your time than we expected to. Thank you so much for joining us. That was our last question.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and it was an honor to be a part of this platform.